now we're ready to get started on adding our first weft. So what I'm going to be doing, and the weft goes across this way, as you remember this is the warp. What I'm going to be doing is winding the yarn around my hand, holding it with my thumb. About 12 to 15 times is usually pretty good. And then I'm going to take my plastic needle, thread this through, hold it so there's just a little bit, and shove it through. And the end goes down to my elbow. So again, we're starting at the spot where there's no doubling up. So this is the end. Each one has its own notch. Up here, they're doubled up right at the edge. So I just start out doing regular weaving. Over, under, over, under. And the end for the selvage needs to be about as long as your pinky, if you remember, and that part needs to get woven in just right up above here. So if I go under here, I go over here. Now here's where it's very different than doing a flat weaving or a rug type weaving, because we're going to be now flipping this over and weaving on the other side. So I'm going to take the whole shebang and flip it over, making sure that my yarn is coming out the same way it's supposed to be. I don't want to get over here with it. Okay, so now this is the tricky part, is starting out with a pouch. So you really have to take it step by step and just remember that it'll only be a pain for a little while. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I need to peek at the back. And what I'm going to be looking for is if this goes under or over. So you can see that the weft, which is going across, goes under the blue. So on the other side I need to start with the opposite. So if this goes under, I need to go over with my needle. So I'll do that now. And I'll just go all the way across, under, over, under, over. And when I pull it, the nice thing about this is no more ladybug loops. I do not need to I do not need a loop on the side. I just pull, pull, pull. You want to be careful not to do this. If it happens, just pull it up. That's another one that only kind of is a problem in the beginning. So now the next step is where it gets a little strange. So what you're going to be doing is make sure when you flip, you have got it coming out this side like this, so that you're up against your shorty now, which is your selvage piece. And your selvage piece at this point, you're going to need to do the same as the selvage piece. So I've got this going over, so I need to go over because I'm copying. It's kind of like copying shorty when we did that in our earlier weaving. And again, it's easier to pull. You just pull, pull, pull. You don't have to worry about leaving any room or anything. You can pull it nice and tight. Okay, now here's the really tricky part that a lot of people get a little lost in the woods on. When I go to flip this over, people are very tempted to do that thing again where you look at the other side and you say, oh, it went over, so I need to go under. Well, that's really not where we need to look anymore. For the rest of our weaving. We don't want to peek at the back. All we need to do is after you flip it over, don't look at the back, just look at the previous row, the last row that you did. So if I'm going to come in and look here, this goes over the warp thread. So I just do the opposite. I go under. So peeking at the back will now really mess you up. So that's the tricky thing about doing a pouch. It's just the beginning. And then once you get the swing of it, it's actually, I think, a little easier than the other method because you don't have to remember about leaving space. So flip it over. Now we're just getting the habit now of only looking at this row that's here. Another thing that can happen when you're weaving a pouch, whoops, I'm sorry, you only pay attention to this row here. When you're weaving a pouch, you want to watch out for things like this. Okay, this is what I see some people do. They flip it over, but then somehow it gets messed up and they start on this side instead, weaving across this way. And what that does is it creates a big loop across your weaving that doesn't make any sense. So you always want to make sure that wherever the last row ended, you're just going right around the loom and starting and doing the opposite of the previous row. And the good news is when it's time to switch colors, the idea is the same. There's just one little difference, so that will be the next demonstration.